love for you to subscribe because this channel is all about creativity and inspiration. I hope you feel inspired to create something amazing. Feel free to share the inspiration because life is a journey we make together. And now I'll show you how this creative project was done. So today I'm in the sewing room working on some more inside-out mats that I've actually done before. They turned out fabulous. They were a big hit. This pattern is by Whorehouse Quilt Designs. They're really fun, really easy, and I had all this extra fabric from making a cactus quilt, so I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to use up some of my scraps. So let me show you how I'm going to do it. So the first thing I do when I'm just kind of getting started on a project, especially if I have lots of pieces, is I go through it and I just kind of do a process of elimination, picking the pieces out that are just too small, that I just can't work with on this project. Maybe another project, I'm looking for 3-inch strips or pieces that I can cut down, but again I'd have to really piece this, so I'm just going to move on. I figured out my biggest pieces and I needed the size of 13 by 18. So I'm making 6 placemats, so they're going to be all different. The second step is to cut your foam. So the placemats are 13 by 18, so you'll either need 4 or 6, however many you're making. And this time I'm using the flex foam. The last time I did this, it was the foam that you actually ironed the fabric onto, and that was nice. It was okay, it worked really well. I had a hard time finding it this year, and it's a little bit more expensive. So I just went with the flex foam and decided just to sew my fabric onto the mats starting out, and it's going to work the same, so it's going to work just fine. And another tip that I really found helpful was using a 1/4 inch foot with a little guide on the side. And I don't start at the very corner. I go ahead and leave my pin there, come down, I don't know, a couple inches, put my project underneath my needle right up against that guide, then drop my needle. So if you're following along the pattern exactly and you don't have any directional fabric, you don't have any different fabrics, they're all the same, then all it is the width of the fabric. You're going to cut 8 strips, 3 inches, and then you're going to just cut those in half and make 16. Depends on how many you're doing. I'm doing 6 placemats. Just think of them as in strips. I've cut my 3-inch strips and I've just kind of pinned them on each one so that I know that I am covered with the directional fabric. I've cut different ones, so now I can just start playing around with what fabric I want where. And that is the tricky part. So the next step is the trim. So in my case, since this is fabric that I've used for a previous project, I have strips already cut 1.5 inches. So I'm going to keep it. I'm not going to cut it down. These instructions are 1 1/4. It'll be just a little bit over, but I think it'll be. So what I'm going to be doing is you fold the trim strips in half lengthwise, wrong sides together, and press. In order to get these strips really crisp, they want you to use a spray starch, or they're suggesting the Mary Ellen's Best Press. So I like to iron it once. Put a few on my ironing board. And I can kind of one more on there. Spray a bunch at once. So far, the most challenging part of this pattern is deciding on which strips go where. So I think I finally got it figured out the way I kind of want it laid out. I wanted them all different, and I think this is it. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pin that trim on the inside raw edge of my border, each one. Now, if your trim isn't as long as your border or vice versa, it doesn't matter as long as the whole thing, your piece, this is a bottom piece, so it has to be more than 18, 19 inches, so that's fine. So you're going to cut it off at the end. Really doesn't matter if it's at this point, if anything is matched up, it's fine. So all you want to really make sure is that you put the trim on the inside. Now I'm going to do one placemat at a time so that I know exactly which side my borders go on, and just kind of take it slow so I don't get confused. So I'm going to take the whole placemat over to by my machine so I can sew the border and the trim together, put it back so I know exactly where it's going to go. Now I really like this 1/4 of an inch foot with the guide. Make sure everything's lined up. So after you've sewn your trim to your borders, what I like to do is just kind of press it the way that you've sewn it, and then I actually flip it over. And with my left hand, I just kind of pull out that trim, and I can actually feel the seam, and then I press it again. And I just kind of go along as I'm pressing, just to open that up. And like I said, I definitely know now with the trim sewn on that where they're going to be placed. And I'm going to go ahead and trim up my sides. I am going to square that side up. So following along with instructions, you're going to be placing the back side of your mat face up. So this is the front, so I'm going to turn it over on the back. Okay, I'm going to show you why in a second, but the instructions are to put a pin 4 inches down from the right hand side. So I'm going to put a pin 4 inches right here. Doesn't have to be exact. So that is the first thing that you want to do. And the side that I'm going to be working on is on this side, the left side. So I'm going to turn this over, and my first piece is going to be right here. But I'm not going to start sewing because another piece is going to come up underneath here. So I'm going to start sewing my piece on at this point, or just a little bit below where my pin is. So I'm going to put a couple pins in here, and I am going to sew below here all the way down. Now either with your rotary cutter or scissors, you're going to take off that tail, and if you had overhang on this side, you're going to do that as well. Trim it up. Now you're going to add your next piece. I know that this is going to be my next piece. I am going to square it up right here. I'm going to pin it. Take it back to your machine. Back in above the trim is where you're going to start to sew. Over the trim to the corner. and all the way down. Hello, friend. Put your next strip on. Know which way it goes, because the trim always is in the center. Line it up. Go ahead and pin it. And again, you start sewing above the trim, over the trim, and all the way down. So for the top border, you're going to start at the edge, pin it a couple times, and on this step is all you got to do is put the top border underneath the one that you first started. Go ahead and pin it. And we're going to sew it the same way. And now the final step is that you go over your trim again. This is the last turn. Make your turn. And now we're sewing on the first border that you placed down. So we'll cut this tail off right now. So you do want to kind of trim your excess fabric, any excess foam. And the first time I tried to do it with the rotary cutter, it wasn't all that easy. So I'm just kind of trimming it up now with my scissors, and I think it seems to be a lot easier. And then you turn it inside out. All of your borders are now coming to the front. You're going to work those corners. And I really like to use some type of tool. This is really handy to get the corners. And I think one tip is if it's not laying right when you turn it inside out, go back and trim a little bit more and see if that doesn't help. Sometimes you just have to really just work your fabric. So once you have your borders flipped to the front, you want to just make sure that the seams are on the side, your borders are pulled all the way around, they're pinned, and when you're sewing in the ditch, your trim, you always start on like the outside edge and you sew all the way down and just stop a little right where you think you're going to intersect. And then you start over here and go down. So you want to just sew right to about there. And there you have it. 4 of the placemats. Just turned out super cute, super easy. Inside out mats by Poorhouse Quilt Designs. Love it! But wait, I still have more fabric. I'm now on to coasters. How fun is that?